Want to travel more but hate to fly? Do the cost of those plane tickets always stop you saying yes to your next trip? Keep listening because this episode is for you. Today we dive into one of our favorite ways to travel, where the journey is just as fun as the destination, the classic road trip.
Welcome to the Travel More podcast.
Each episode, we share custom itineraries, travel hacks, expert advice, and even stories of our past travel failures to help you level up your travel game.
I'm Shelly, a lover of plans, itineraries, and cheap flights. I'm an expert deal finder with one eye always on the budget.
And I'm Bruce, the improviser, ready to pick up where plans fail to turn letdowns into unexpected trip favorites. We're here to bust through barriers that stop you from making your travel dreams a reality.
So book that flight, buy the tickets, and say hello to your next adventure.
This is the Travel More Podcast. So welcome back to the Travel More Podcast. This is our 5th episode.
Woohoo!
And today I'm excited because we're going away from international trips or flying and talking about the good old-fashioned road trip.
Our one true love.
Yeah, man. I think it all starts with the road trip, right?
Yeah. Well, we started road tripping. That was like our very first thing. I think we road tripped in the first month that we were together.
That's true.
Yeah.
Hey, actually, now that I think about it, our first adventure together. Well, Shelly and I were working in a place we couldn't really leave because we were doing theater and we were busy every day.
Yeah.
But towards the end of the season, we may have had one day off.
I think we had 2.
We had 2 days off.
But not the night.
Right, because the night we were still
day.
doing shows. So we were in Cape Cod. Shout out to College Light Opera. And we left to go visit, I guess, my town. Yeah, we saw my house, like where I grew up.
Yep.
Which was only a couple hours away.
Yep.
But that was a midnight road trip too.
It was a midnight.
That was one of our first.
We started off strong.
Yeah, we did.
With crazy road trips. And since then, we've only done crazier and crazier and crazier
bigger road trips. But, the cool thing about road trips, and why would you want to do them when we're thinking about, I guess, just traveling more, getting more travel into your life, they're probably the easiest, can be the most cost-effective ways to go places.
Yeah, and honestly, they're really easy kind of like entry-level travel because they don't require as much pre-planning. Right. Well, I guess it depends on what type of road trip. The one we're going to talk about today requires an immense amount of pre-planning. But in general, they don't have to.
They're not and they don't have to. I mean, if you're truly a spontaneous improviser and you want to just go for it, you could leave a lot up to the moment. But again, it depends on how long you're going and where you're going.
But they're just a good entry because you can kind of just say, we're going to go to this place this weekend, and you can go. You don't have to worry about plane tickets. You don't have to worry about who's getting you at the airport or how you're getting away from the airport or your luggage or your carry-ons or, all these other minutia type things in travel.
I would say one of the things about getting flights that are cheaper, which we've talked about in other episodes, it can still be challenging if you're not someone who's thinking and planning really far ahead. If you're not exactly sure and you're getting into it, planning for a road trip, you have more flexibility.
Yeah.
With what you do, where you go. And even with gas prices fluctuating over the last few years, it's still going to be more economical, especially if you're going with friends.
I would just say, if you're not going by yourself, because you can split everything.
And then if you have kids and you're not really sure about flying with them, I think road trips can really be the way to go.
Oh, absolutely. We've road tripped, of course, New England, where we currently live. We've road tripped Canada. We've gone Connecticut to Orlando, Vermont to Memphis. And then today we're going to talk mostly about our Connecticut to Washington State and back trip.
That was the classic American road trip.
Going the all-American.
Out west, right?
Route 66 and all.
Yes, exactly. So, we've done quite a few. And, honestly, some of the earlier trips that we took when we didn't have as much money, so flying was definitely
out of the question.
Maybe, we did not fly that much. Even with finding cheaper cost tickets, it still was a lot.
Yeah.
But if we had any event to go to, I think we always tried to tie in the idea of the road trip to getting to the destination, which is a big part of it, right? So if you spend 8-12 hours flying to destinations, you're missing that because you have to fly.
Yeah, and we originally chose road trips because we have a good amount of time off through the year, but I think with the kind of the advent of virtual work, and people being able to work from home, I think road trips are starting to be more and more attractive and starting to kind of make a comeback, so to speak.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the case, especially if you're someone who could take up and do your work, on the road. One of our friends actually does that when he comes from New York. He's able to take a day, extend his trip, come up to Connecticut and see us because he's able to do some of his work out of the office.
Yeah.
He's got one, and you might have one of those hybrids where you only have to go in once a week. So it's definitely a cool option.
Yeah.
And I think my favorite thing about road trips is it is all about the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of that friend, shout out to Andrew. One of my favorite gifts that we got for our wedding was a really cool piece of artwork made from license plates that says "Enjoy the journey."
Yep.
And that's the best part about this type of travel is you can really every stop you make, everywhere you're going, you can enjoy wherever you're going, and you have multiple destinations, so it's just the whole experience can be really fun.
Yeah, it does allow a certain flexibility that you don't get when you fly.
Right.
You get to see everything.
Well, and also when you're driving, you can really stop and pace things yourself,
right?
Which I think is important because Shelly and I, when we get into our itinerary for this big road trip we're about to go through, we definitely are long haulers.
Yeah. We
can go back and forth driving, taking quick breaks, and 5 hours at a time stay on the road. But you don't have to do that.
Right. That's a big thing to keep in mind as we talk about road trips is there are kind of multiple ways, obviously, to do them. One big one that you'll notice ours leans heavily towards one side is that flexibility is different from complete abandon. So as always, I like to do a bit of both, but mostly planning and leave Bruce up for the flexibility part. But, some people, like Bruce mentioned before, they do kind of just say, we're going to this place, we'll see when we get tired, and we'll pull over and find a hotel. So that's not our style. So the way that we planned this trip is not in that style, though that's a totally legitimate way to do a road trip.
Just kind of go. You can have one destination in mind and go where your heart takes you each day to get there.
Right. It's just not how we did it. So, keep it in mind as we go through.
So why don't we get into it?
Yeah,
So the next part about this, we're going to break down one of our biggest road trips we've taken, which took 5 weeks, and it was our trip out west.
Mm-hmm. So for this trip, we started obviously in Connecticut where we live, and we did a straight, super long haul all the way to Chicago, where Bruce's family lives. So we went to go stay with them. Honestly, we wanted to focus on the West as much as possible. So we kind of skipped a lot of anything east of the Mississippi.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, anything east of the Mississippi.
Because we've done a lot of traveling there.
And north to south on this side of the country.
Yeah. I'm from Memphis, so we've gone back and forth a lot. So we kind of just skipped that.
Right. So we got to right outside of Chicago where my brother lives.
Yep.
And that was our first base camp.
Yeah.
And that's about 15 hours, I think, from Connecticut. So really our first destination on this itinerary was the Badlands.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I put the Badlands on there partly because I had a friend who went who said it was cool, but I didn't really look much into it. And then I knew that it was a way to get further west, which was the point. Right. So I put it on there, but I could not have been prepared for how awesome the Badlands
side note,
was.
Not only first of all, if you want to see pictures and read about this more, definitely go to our website where you can see some really cool pictures of all these destinations, but the Badlands in particular. But also, our first version of this itinerary was before COVID, and we had a lot more like cities in mind. Mm-hmm. But then we realized we wanted to still do it, so we turned it really into like national parks and a lot more places where there weren't a lot of people. So Badlands was perfect for that.
It was literally amazing. We felt like we had the whole park to ourselves.
Yeah, there were not many people there. It's a big park.
It is. It is a big park.
It's not as big as some.
No, but it's not as frequented as some either.
Yeah.
So it's not nearly as big as Yellowstone, for example. But it's also Yellowstone's the most popular, park in the country. So it's not like that either.
So some highlights for this: we were there for 3 days. We camped, so we took our car, Nissan Rogue, so midsize SUV with a nice car camping setup.
Yes, we're not hucking it. Really.
Right. So we had a cooler. We would go get food. We had a pop-up type tent that was really more like a canopy that had walls. So it was really comfortable. We had
a really cool coffee situation. We have a what is it called? A mocha pot.
Oh, the mocha pot. It's like a stove pot espresso kind of classic. And we had a little jet boil that was easy to pack up. That could be, you could use it for backpacking, you know, but we used it for this. Yeah, if I would do this again, I might get one of those like Coleman stoves. We could have a little bit more of a cooking setup, but you know, we didn't always cook at our camp. Camping was really just our place to sleep.
Yeah.
It was really easy. It kept things cheap.
Yeah, so the Badlands, we went hiking a lot. We almost had a serious fail with not needing enough water. Not having enough water on a 10-mile hike. It was also our longest hike to date at that point.
At that point, yeah, it was 10 or 12.
I think it was 10.
But it's a desert. And honestly, I've never been any place with a humidity that was under like, I don't know, 50% regularly.
It was a little crazy.
So,
I
I never realized how much you don't realize just how much water you lose. Because it's so dry. You don't feel the heat.
Yeah, it was interesting to say the least. But we did survive. And while we were there, we kept seeing these signs for wall drug with no context. Like it would be like, go see wall drug. It's 40 minutes down the road or whatever. But it didn't actually tell you what it was. And we didn't have great service here. So at one point we just decided like, we have to go see what this is. We've been seeing these signs for like 100 miles, which is another cool thing about the road trip, especially out west when everything's like roadside attraction.
Which I totally thought was like, I don't know, not real.
I don't know what we thought.
I don't know what I thought.
I was
But I'm
concerned.
so glad we went to Wall
it's so cool.
Which was like a true Western outpost.
Oh yeah, it was really cool. It was nice to get some food.
It's fun. You got to go there if you're going to go to the Badlands.
Yeah.
I mean, there's really no other place to go.
No, there's not. I mean, the Badlands itself, but if you wanted to get out and like sit down at a restaurant or like go get some souvenirs it was a really cool spot.
So that was our first stop.
Yep.
And then our next stop was going to be in Montana, where ultimately we were trying to get to Glacier National Park. But between then, we didn't have any, certain stops. So when we were out at the Badlands, I had found, we knew we wanted to stop through Mount Rushmore and just see it.
Yeah.
But then even more important and more impressive, in my opinion, was the Crazy Horse Monument.
Agree.
That's still being built there, which I won't go into the history right now, but I'll tell you, man, if there's one place to go see when you're in this area, is go see Crazy Horse Monument.
It's very cool. It's got a very cool museum as well. So you learn all the history.
Really important heritage and history of native tribes there, and also the family who's in charge of building this structure. Some really cool history about that story as well.
Yeah.
So that was one of the fun things. Mount Rushmore was cool. Definitely
it was Mount Rushmore.
What?
It was Mount Rushmore. It was Mount Rushmore. Whatever you see in the pictures, it is that still. And then we kind of just saw Devil's Tower like in the distance, and we were both like, "What is that?" And then we realized it's from that movie. Close Encounters.
Yes,
isn't that it?
Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah, and so we're like, we should go see it because we have enough time on the way because we had a hotel in Helena, Montana, not quite Glacier, but Helena, Montana, and we knew we could make it, so we stopped at Devil's Tower, which was also a super cool stop. It had a cool little hike. We did about half of it, I think, but we had to cut it short because we did want to make it before the sunset to Helena. It was still quite a haul. It was
cool because we did go to the museum at Crazy Horse, and then we learned about just migrations of the native people there. And this rock, this giant formation, the Devil's Tower, is really cool. But it was kind of like a meeting ground at certain points a year. So a really great place to stop.
Yeah. So we get to Helena, Montana, and this is truly just we need somewhere to stay. And we were glad we did this. Where we were going to camp was only another 2 hours away. So you'd think like you would just keep driving. But actually, like, it was nice. It was already, like, I think a 9-hour trek from the Badlands to Helena.
And it was boring, a lot of that.
It was really boring, except for the beginning where we saw all those monuments. Right. And then it was really boring. Literally, we went to go find something to eat. I'm just remembering this story now. And we looked up fast food, and there was nothing.
It was like 200 miles. I think
it was 50 miles that it searched in each direction. And there was literally nothing. So we pulled over the side of the road and ate the bologna out of our
I forgot we always have bologna sandwiches. Pro tip, get bologna sandwiches. Or just always have something. When you're road tripping, man, you always want to make sure you've got water, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, snacks.
Isn't that what you look forward to the most of a road trip, though, is like going and getting your road trip snacks?
Yes.
And we had a serious haul.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we had a lot. We were trying to be all cool and outdoorsy, so we had a lot of things like, protein bars and jerky and stuff.
Right, anything ready for, like, hiking, because we knew we were going to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, But anyway, yeah, sometimes you'd think, why wouldn't we just drive the extra 12 hours? But we were camping, 2 hours.
2 hours.
Yeah, sorry, 2 hours.
12 hours would be easy.
All
to
together
know.
it would have been 12, right?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we have done it all at once? Well, this was also stringing together, what was our accommodations? If you're road tripping and camping, it was nice to break up camping once in a while with a stop at like a hotel.
Yeah, and during COVID, we had to plan our showers.
Right.
Like they didn't
yes.
have shower facilities open at campgrounds anywhere, I don't think.
No,
and
I don't.
so we had to keep putting.
Well, not anywhere, but it was the federal parks.
I don't think anywhere has showers.
Maybe. We'll have to fact check this one. At the
Yeah.
time, these are things that consider your road trip.
Wait a sec. So there are shower facilities at these places. They were just closed. One in particular I remember was Yellowstone because I had planned that, I had planned that as a shower location, and it wasn't, and it put us on a very long streak of not showering.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah, so
just some things, there are some things that are nice to know ahead of time when you plan, and there are some things that are more fun to improv. But
yeah, so we get to Helena. And it was a really cool city. We both were surprised at how awesome that city was. And we kind of said, we want to come back, one, for Glacier National Park, because it was also closed mostly because of COVID.
At that time, there was really no COVID cases out west.
No, there had been in Washington, but not in Montana.
The mountain area.
Yeah.
Not West Coast.
Yeah.
But, so there were still things open.
Yeah.
It was really curious kind of watching the pandemic develop, but then being out there where the population is so less dense. So it hadn't really affected them greatly yet. Yeah,
it was kind of a weird juxtaposition from where we come from on the northeast coast, which everything was shut down.
Right.
So it was interesting. But anyways, we stayed in Helena and vowed to be back because it was such a cool city. And then we went the next day. Well, actually, remember we stopped at that grocery store and got some more provisions.
Yep.
And then we went up to Holland Lake, which, I feel like we're going to say this a million times, but maybe is the most amazing place I've ever been.
So one of the best parts about this trip, because some of the bigger name places were closed down, it forced us to look at other options. And, camping at Glacier would have been awesome.
Yeah.
But if you look a little deeper and check out state campgrounds, which, if I remember correctly, was Reserve America.
Which I think is also for the national parks.
Yes, but you can look up state campgrounds.
Yeah, you can.
And I really recommend, if you like camping, looking up state campgrounds or even private campgrounds in different states, because we were able to find what was, I almost don't want to tell people.
I know. I'm seriously, it was literally like a private Glacier National Park.
Yes, it was awesome.
Like a tiny sliver of it by yourself.
And there are a number of campgrounds and lakes around that area. So this is 2 hours out of Glacier, but it was beautiful. Really, it was as close to probably being in Alaska.
Yeah, I remember we were thinking about that.
Yeah,
while we were there, even
really
we were like,
mountains, wow, awesome hikes, beautiful, and it was cold too. I remember it was
kind of cold this whole trip.
Well, yeah, we were in the mountains, so.
Yeah, and just so you know, the trip took place from about early June to early July, mid-July maybe.
Right.
So, it wasn't August, I guess, but it was a little chilly, I remember.
So we spent some time there, and we drove up to Glacier, which was awesome. Saw the famous lake there, what's the name of the lake? I'm trying to remember.
Holland Lake.
No, not Holland Lake. That's where we stayed. What's the lake at Glacier, the big one with the rocks that are colorful, that everybody over filters?
They pull the contrast or all the colors way up. Yes. Oh, what is that called?
Oh man, it's gonna come to me. I thought
we're gonna have to come back to it.
We'll have to come
I don't know. But it is the lake.
Yes.
I almost want to say McDonald.
Yes.
Is that right?
I'm looking at it.
You're literally gonna search it. I think it's Lake McDonald. Is it? Was I right?
Yes, you're right. You're right.
Perfect.
That's what I was thinking too. But for some reason, I had some other sergeant or major.
So we did get to go to Lake McDonald. We got to see it, and we got to take the the rock picture where you can see the rocks. They were colorful, not quite as colorful as some people's cameras
Go
make
see it
them
for
out
yourself.
to be.
Yeah. Don't just trust the Instagram photos.
But it
beautiful.
was still amazingly beautiful. It's honestly hard to even get a good picture of because of how pretty it is. So I understand why people pull the colors.
Oh, 100%.
But anyway, so, we spent a little bit of time in Glacier. Definitely want to go back because most of it was closed. We were also by ourselves. And Bruce had an enormous fear the entire time that we would be attacked by grizzly bears.
A little scared.
And even though we had grizzly...
bear mace?
Yeah, bear mace. And it does say in Glacier National Park to go in groups of at least 3, and we're only 2. And it was serious COVID time.
To be fair, the likelihood of being attacked by an animal is
very low. But they
know?
do say to keep that group of 3, and we were only a group of 2.
I will say the rangers did say
nervous.
the parks have been closed so long, and it was that time of year when the bears come down from the mountains,
Yeah.
and the animal activity was higher because nobody was around.
We did not see a grizzly bear, though, in Glacier.
No, but we did later, so we'll tell you that in a second.
I'll have to stick around. All right, so as we move on, our next stop was like the Seattle areas where another friend of ours lives. So this is another pro tip in terms of road tripping. Is it can be a really good idea to go see people that you normally can't go see. One, it's a great way to get there, and you get to have all this cool vacation in the middle, just getting to it, the actual journey to your friend. But also, it is a good way to kind of like stop, get your bearings. Obviously, well, we hope that you don't have to pay to stay at your friend's house. So it can be a nice way to kind of like save your money on accommodations and also get showers, like cook food with them, like really kind of settle in and like get your bearings again, because it can be really tiring.
If you can find an itinerary where you're mapping out things and you can stop and see friends or family, even better. It just makes it easier. Yeah. And again, it's all part of the journey.
If you aren't seeing friends and family, I would seriously recommend finding a place that you're going to go spend. If it's this long of a road trip, I'd almost spend close to a week, which is what we spent in Seattle, just because by this time we had driven, hours and hours and hours across the entire country. We'd stayed in a lot of campsites, and we were tired. And this is only kind of in the beginning of our journey still, not even the halfway mark. So we kind of needed that time to come back and, get our bearings, like I keep saying.
Right. So, that was kind of our first stretch all the way west, from the very East Coast to West Coast. And we stayed about north of Seattle, near Anacortes and Bow, Washington. Shout out to Merlin. Thank you so much.
There's a lot of shout outs in this episode.
Yeah, man, you got to. So we enjoyed time there. We got to see killer whales.
Yeah, whale
orcas.
Watching.
Yeah, we got to do some really cool stuff there and explore the area before we went south.
Yep.
So our next stop, we had a lot of options here too, which is really fun to think of all the places you could go. But you really, you got to just pick some. And even after, we hadn't planned this out completely. So with the help of our friend who we were staying with, we decided on some areas down on the Oregon coast.
Yeah, so the Oregon coast was, I guess, one of my highlights in terms of like what I expected versus what I saw. And honestly, this was a couple of years ago. I know that places like trend on Instagram, they have been forever, but I feel like this one, and actually road tripping in general, has been trending more since COVID than it did before. So a lot of these places, I feel like people are like, well, yeah, it's beautiful. It's all over TikTok. It's all over Instagram. But at the time, it wasn't. And so I remember the Oregon coast like being completely blown away by the beauty that was the Oregon coast. Like, it was not like any beach I had ever seen before. And we had literally lived at the beach. We went to Key West for Christmas the year before. So, but
it's so different.
It's so different. Yeah, it was beautiful.
And now, having also gone to LA and seeing the southern and northern Pacific coast, man, it is awesome.
Those are also different from each other.
That would be its own road trip, is doing that. I think it's the Pacific Highway, right?
Yeah,
that
it
road
is.
That brings you up and down, which is very popular.
And we meant to do that, but had to cancel it because of COVID.
Right, so we were going to end up doing even more, but really California was not open at this time.
No.
So we decided to stick where it made sense and was responsible, being away from people. But some quick highlights of Oregon coast. We stayed at Tilcomb Beach Campground, which was amazing. It's beachfront. It's beautiful. It wasn't expensive. We got to see some really cool features like Cape Perpetua, Thor's Well. Remember Thor's Well?
Yeah, it was actually awesome. A little scary.
It was a little scary.
I do remember it.
So a bunch of different, beach inlets that you can go out and just hike and see. We went to Newport. We went to Rogue Brewery. That was really cool.
That was cool.
So that was kind of our end of being on the west. And
then we started going back east.
Right, and we did stop through Portland, but again, it was very quick because still COVID shut down.
Portland, I don't even know if we can say we've been to Portland.
Nah, I wouldn't say.
We've literally been in there, but everything was closed. Yeah. We were able to get takeout at a place, and that was about it.
Right. So then we started our journey back east, and our main goal was really to get to Yellowstone next, but we needed to break it up a little bit. So,
and it was my birthday.
And it was your birthday. So we, looking at the map, kind of thinking, all right, and again, this is where you'd think on your road trip, how many hours do you want to drive before you get somewhere?
Yeah.
Shelly and I are really comfortable doing 9 to 12-hour drives and stints. So that put us back in Idaho in the Sawtooth Mountains.
Yeah.
Which, really cool place.
Really
Never really realized the beauty of these mountain states, but man,
it's a common theme.
Yeah, Idaho, so gorgeous, and if you're a skier, we got to stop through some of these major famous ski areas, like this was Sun Valley, I believe, but we stayed probably an hour away from that, where there's a ton of hot springs and even like an old ghost town, kind of like mining, gold mine town.
Idaho City, I believe, is the name of that.
Idaho City, very cool little spot.
Very cool.
Some really fun things to see. And we stayed at this little hotel. I guess it was
an Airbnb.
It was an Airbnb, right?
It was like cabins.
And they had hot springs that would fill up like a tub.
Like a hot tub in your little back porch area.
Yeah,
but I remember we got there and it was so incredibly hot that I was like, what is the point of this even? Like, it will literally burn your skin off. But then I saw...
You have to mix it.
Yeah, they actually had like a
spring
hose.
Water or whatever.
Yeah,
right.
That you could make it your own temperature because right off the bat, it was so like
there's
boiling
a lot
hot.
of hot springs to find and explore. There was one we were going to camp and stay overnight at, I remember, but we didn't end up doing that one. But
yeah, I don't know that we found that out though until we were there.
I think it was closed, right?
I don't know. I think that we got there and we're like, oh, you can stay here. I don't know that we knew that because also
this
we're trying
an improv thing, right.
And we're trying to plan our showers here.
Right.
And this place that we stayed was an Airbnb obviously has its own showers.
So long story short, Idaho, really awesome. Big mountains.
Idaho honestly
springs.
is a place that I would want to just drive through.
Right.
Like, I would be sad if I flew into it and flew out. You'd miss, like, everything.
That is a big, again, like, enjoying just the scenery. There were some stretches that were pretty dull, like, to be honest.
The Montana one was pretty dull.
The Dakotas are just flat.
Yeah, but this one was not one of those. This one was amazingly pretty. We even saw a little family of mountain goats.
Oh, yeah.
On the
So
side
when we were
of the road.
driving out, after we stayed in that area where the hot springs were, we saw mountain goats, which are actually pretty rare to find.
A little family.
Yep. And they were on
of
the
white
road.
ones. We saw like the grayish brown ones in the Badlands, but this was like the
Are they both called mountain goats?
I don't know. It's another thing we're going to have to fact check.
Well,
Let's fact check in this one too.
The ones that are like on the insignia for Glacier Park on Montana are the white ones with the horns.
Yeah,
so we
saw
those. Really cool goats. But we drove through Sun Valley, and then before we went into Yellowstone, we actually stopped at another national park, Craters of the Moon, which was really cool. I didn't know anything about this park.
This was a total like improv stop.
Yep, so we saw it on the map on the way, and we had to stop, and it's just like volcanic area of Idaho, and it was actually where the first moon landing crew trained, because the terrain was what they thought would be similar to like the moon, and it really is.
It looks like it.
It's really cool.
It is really cool.
Well kept, another great like national park. So then we made it to Yellowstone. Yeah,
so Yellowstone was a rare occasion of, I mean, maybe I'm speaking for myself here because I don't want to speak for Bruce, but Yellowstone was, disappointing is too strong of a word, but it
definitely, yeah. Go ahead.
It just
explain, and then
after the many camping trips we had experienced up to this point, we got to Yellowstone, and it was like Disney World camping. And listen, like I love Disney. I am a Disney person. But
what do you mean by that, show?
This is it just wasn't, it didn't have the same feeling. And the people...
Well, up until this point, I think we had done a lot of less traveled.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
More, even some more rugged camping situations. I mean, we weren't backpacking at all, but when we got to Yellowstone, it definitely was the most curated and visited by people who had never really done anything outdoors.
Yeah, there were definitely people who weren't following what we call like the rules of camping.
Right.
And that can be very frustrating when you're already 3 weeks into a pretty much fully camped trip, that you're kind of like, okay, we're going to do this again. And then you're like, oh, these people are like on my lot, or these people are like literally blaring music at 9 p.m. It's now midnight.
There are a lot of
still
people
doing
there,
it.
right? There are a lot of people there.
Yeah, a lot of people there.
Yellowstone is awesome. It's huge. And I think if I were to go again, I would not camp on one of the main campgrounds, but see if I could camp off site.
I'd go to the
somewhere
Tetons.
else, or go to the Tetons.
I would camp at the Tetons and visit Yellowstone.
Right, because the hikes in Yellowstone, again, we were only there for 2 days.
Yeah, really just one day, because we went to the Grand Tetons for the other day.
But I mean, really going to Lamar Valley in the morning and seeing the animals. Fantastic, and really made me realize how much I wish I had binoculars that were powerful,
which we have now.
But there were a lot of nice people there that helped us see. We saw wolves, right? The red wolf.
I think we saw pretty much everything in Yellowstone.
We did, but importantly, we saw the wolves that were reintroduced not that long ago. They were extinct from the area.
I don't know. I saw a wolf while you were in the bathroom at 5 a.m.
Right in our campsite.
It was 3 feet from me and scared me very badly.
And that's where we saw the grizzly bear too.
Yeah, but not in our campsite.
No, we saw him. Well, so one thing about Yellowstone that does make it feel a little more like an amusement park is that you're driving on the road and then people will be stopped and everybody's getting out and blocking the road, which can be frustrating. But
well, at first you're very excited because you're like, oh, there's an animal around. Yeah. And then towards the end of the trip, you're like, it's just another bison. That was a thing we kept saying was like, oh, it's another bison.
Yeah. And we'd already seen him in the Badlands, but we did see a grizzly bear, which was so awesome because I was hoping we'd see him. We saw a lot of black bears too. And we
saw a moose. Couple moose,
and we actually, when we were hiking in the Tetons, if there was a mountain range or mountain peak and hike that we did, the Tetons are right up there with some of the nicest, coolest things we've done. And also hiking with bears, that was cool.
Yeah, literally hiking with them, they were there, very close, not more than 10 yards. There just was I think a stream between us.
Yeah, there was some water.
So we felt like, oh, it's okay. But they were just kind of hanging out.
It helped that there were a lot of people on the trail and everybody was kind of minding their own. Yeah. So we did see a moose. We saw some bears. They were black bears.
And also we see a lot of people on the trail though. A lot of people in the Tetons is not a lot of people in Yellowstone.
That's true.
Because a lot of people in Yellowstone is literally like you're at a theme park or some sort of museum. It's definitely you're kind of shoulder to shoulder with people in quite a few instances. The Tetons there was just a constant kind of stream of people, but then you'd get into parts where you were by yourself and then you'd go back in and you'd find you'd pass other people. So it wasn't like you were hiking in a conga line. It was still fairly deserted compared to Yellowstone, which was not deserted. So anyways, we got Tetons we did for one day, Yellowstone we did for one day, and we actually drove the entire park of Yellowstone in that one day.
In and of itself.
But yeah, it was a 10-hour drive. So
we had a good
overview
of Yellowstone. And it did make me realize that if I were to do it again, there were some places you could go that do feel a little bit more off the grid of it.
I would have done more hiking.
Yeah, definitely more hiking
because we did mostly just driving.
I think the best feature of Yellowstone and probably of some of these other parks are backcountry hiking where there's no trail. You blaze your own way. Typically, that means you have to register with the rangers and get a backcountry permit. Yeah. There's a process. So if you're interested in that, definitely look into it. If we had more time and we picked a place, I would definitely do that.
Yep. So after Yellowstone, we were continuing back east, but we're going south as well a little bit here, and we stopped in Colorado. So we stayed in Dillon, Colorado, which we honestly picked because of the distance it was from the Tetons in Yellowstone.
Right, because we wanted to make sure we're covering ground as we're making our way back.
And we knew we wanted to stop in Colorado, but we picked Dillon in particular because of where it was.
There was also a campsite.
There was a campsite.
That was open at the time.
And it was open, and it was on our route, so it hit the marks. So this was like the 10th time we had rebooked all of this. So Dillon it was.
And Dillon, honestly, I don't think I realized just how centric it was to all the major ski resorts, like Vail and Breckenridge. And Boulder was probably only, I think, 45 minutes away. So we kind of came out of the wilderness where we've been staying and got back into what felt like just being in a city of sorts. Still in the beautiful mountains, but it was kind of nice because we were getting a bit tired, I'd say, of not showering and camping. And even with our long respite in Washington State, we were getting a bit tired. So it was nice to be in Dillon. I think... No, there were no showers there open, were there? We had to wait to Santa Fe.
That was a long...
I remember you were getting like dreads or something at this point.
Yeah, it was a lot.
But it was fun. We spent some time in Breckenridge, really fun. And I remember Shelly got an awesome deal on some off-season ski gear.
That was amazing. They were like, this is all of our ski gear from this season that didn't sell. And they're like, which nothing sold because all the ski resorts closed down halfway through the season. So they had all this gear when then usually they'd only have like a couple sizes.
It was like 75% off.
It was crazy.
You could never see that
I would have never bought this stuff for full price because I just couldn't have. It's amazing stuff. I just couldn't have afforded it. So it was great. Colorado was just as amazing as we thought it would be. And of course, we'll be back there at some point as well. And then to New Mexico.
And on the way to New Mexico, we stopped at another national park, which was really fun.
Another improv.
Yes. Oh, yeah, because we didn't have this one either.
No, we just saw it, and we're like, well, that seems cool.
This one is the Sand Dune National Park. Is it Great Sand Dune? I think it's the Great
Sand Dunes
right?
National Park.
Great Sand Dune. And honestly, man, if you had showed me a picture of this and said this is the United States of America, I would never have believed you.
Yeah. It looks like endless desert.
Yeah, you'd think it's somewhere, like, I don't know.
In the Middle East or something.
Yeah, or the Sahara or something like that. Really awesome place. In Colorado, this mountainous area, I guess if you're into geography or like weather, it is cool because depending on where you are in Colorado, you've got desert, you've got like this mountain alpine zone, you've got, different areas. So the effect of these sand dunes is just caused by some of these patterns where all of this sand is built up and creates this natural area. One of the coolest things that you can do here is like sledding down the dune.
Yeah, or snowboarding.
Or snowboarding down the dune.
Well, it's sandboarding, I guess. But it's the same idea. We were way too tired to attempt this.
We just hiked out there and that was hard enough, just walking in the sand. We did we hike to the top? No. No. We looked at it and said, no way.
Honestly, at this point, we were, we're even like pretty like go travelers, and we were hitting a wall.
Yeah, this kicked
for
our
sure.
Butts. But
because when we got to New Mexico after the sand dunes, we like hit our Airbnb and we're like done.
Yeah, we were definitely done. And we had another cool Airbnb in Santa Fe, which awesome architecture there. Like
that's another one.
Is that adobo style?
Yeah,
I think,
they're like made of
clay,
like clay, terracotta type.
Right.
Yeah. So the thing about Santa Fe is it was a recipe for rest, I guess, in our way here, because one, we were extremely tired, and two, it was pretty shut down. There were still, we like sat outside at a restaurant or two, we sat at a rooftop bar for drinks at the end of the night, but it was pretty shut down. Like the stores were pretty much closed. It wasn't a bustling city as you may find it today. So because of that, and because we were so tired and the humidity was 7%, it felt like our eyeballs are drying up.
I felt like my eyes were made of paper.
Yeah, we could not drink enough water. We pretty much just rested on the Santa Fe day. We watched the entire season of Space Force.
Oh yeah, it came out. That's right.
Yeah, so it was kind of a perfect storm because everything was closed and we were tired, and that's what it was.
It was nice. We did get to walk. Santa Fe is really known for its artists.
Yeah. It's actually the second art capital of the country, I believe, after New York City, which is pretty impressive seeing that it's not that big a city. So we did get to see some galleries and some cool stuff. And I had a margarita that definitely hit me harder than any drink because of altitude and humidity.
So
it's like the best margarita I've ever had in my life.
It was also excellent. And the food was good.
It was unbelievably
Santa
good.
Fe, I would definitely want to go back and kind of see more of the Southwest.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely were at the point where we were ready to be winding down.
Yeah, we were getting a little tired.
So I guess this brings us to one of the most fun stories of the end of our road trip.
I guess you can call it fun.
All right, yeah. So we were going to, I guess our end was really going to be Memphis, Tennessee, where Shelly's from, because we were going to spend some time there and kind of recoup before we finally went back to Connecticut.
Another good excuse to see my family.
Right. So that was kind of our end game. But before we got there, we were going to pick up Shelly's brother, who had
we weren't supposed to. We weren't
supposed to. That's right.
It was you clearly don't remember the details, the finer details. So we had to skip Austin as a last minute. We were gonna stay at Austin literally 3 days before, and then everything was
COVID was ever changing. It shut down.
And we just didn't think it was worth it, so we canceled our Airbnb in Austin and just went straight through Oklahoma City because it was a closer shot towards Memphis. And we had something by the airport, a day's in or something. And my brother called and was getting out of basic training, and he had been, he was flying from Texas, I believe, or actually maybe, I don't know where he was flying from, but the point is that his flight got grounded in Texas because of a storm. And so he calls me and he's kind of freaking out. He's not as well traveled, and he, he's like, I don't know how I'm going to get home. And of course he wanted to see me, and he was only going to be around I was only going to be around for a couple days.
And he's just getting out of basic.
Right, he's just getting out of basic. He just wants to go home.
Yeah.
So he was upset and was trying to figure out how he was going to get back. And I said, well, actually, as luck has it, we're in Oklahoma right now, and we're going to Memphis tomorrow. So if you want to, we can try to figure out how to meet up. And so that's what we did. He got a rental car and met us in northern Texas, and we drove to Texas from Oklahoma, picked him up, and drove back to our hotel in Oklahoma because we had already checked in. We'd barely gotten in the door in Oklahoma when he called, so we didn't get home until We didn't get to the hotel until 3 a.m. or something.
That's right. Yeah, it was super late.
It was super late,
but
and then we got him, and he had a mat because he was just at basic training. So, we had a mat, but he was like, "It's okay, I was just at basic." So he slept on the floor because we only had one. We didn't even have a couch. It was the most basic hotel room, and so whatever. We got him.
Hours before we got up, and then made it back to Memphis.
Then we made it back to Memphis.
That kind of rounds it up. Oh, you forgot about? Did we get barbecue with Steven, or did we?
No, on the way we did stop in one little pit stop in Texas because we had to get some Texas barbecue. I had to compare it. So we did. I tried to look this place up, and I think it's permanently closed. The place that we went to, yeah.
Man, it was a real mom and pop, brisket, Texas.
It was literally this guy, the back of his house.
Right.
And there was a smoker, and he handed it to us in a styrofoam thing.
The only thing, those are the things you're only going to get on a road trip, man.
Exactly. You would never find that unless you were just driving by it. So that is the end of the road trip. Was our last little rescue mission of my brother in Texas, and then we finally made it to Memphis, got to rest up a little bit, and then took the crazy long haul back from Memphis to Connecticut, which is about 21 hours, but we've done that a few times, so no big deal.
Okay, so that was a super long itinerary with a lot of fun stuff, and again, if you check out our website, you can see pictures and more stories from that trip. So why don't we get into our road trip tips? I know we kind of talked through some of them when we went through our itinerary, but here's kind of the ones that we break down. So one thing, you want to figure out how far you're willing to drive. I would just go on Google Maps and start looking at how far those hours will get you. A nice thing on Google Maps is you can add destinations and string them together and have, various options too. So you could choose to avoid highways, you could choose to avoid tolls, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, because when you're looking and you're saying 6 hours, you can go 6 hours and tend towards the north, you can tend towards the south, you can go straight across 6 hours. So it's not just that you'll get one destination if you look for 6 hours away. You'll get a lot. So I would just start playing around and see where it will get you. Right.
It's almost like you're using, if you had a map and you were kind of putting your finger on your location and then drawing out a line of how far 6 will get you, you can kind of wiggle around and see a radius of sorts around that area. And then you can start to string together some cool spots to stop.
Yeah.
So then number 2, you want to leave time to stop on the way in case you find something cool.
Which we clearly did many times.
Yes. So you always want to have some buffer. You don't want to be having to arrive to your destination exactly on time with no wiggle room, and it's always getting in late or whatever.
That's just not really the style of the road trip.
Right, because again, it's about enjoying some of the journey as opposed to just trying to get to wherever you're going.
Yep.
So number 3, you want to figure out your travel style. Do you want to go totally flexible, or do you want to do something closer to what we did, which was having more of an anchor in each of your locations? So we definitely had a hotel booked for every night, or we knew where we were sleeping.
Yeah.
And for us,
for me, that was a must.
And yeah, as much as I really like to improvise, when it was a big trip like this, discovering where we might sleep, especially during COVID, would have been really stressful, I think.
Really stressful. And even if it's not COVID, going in some of the, higher volume summer months, places sell out. And it's just, you can't count on it. And I just don't want to be looking around at midnight for somewhere to stay.
And there is something to it though. Kind of just driving until you decide you want to be somewhere and stop for the night.
For sure.
It's just another way. So you got to figure out your style. And the next thing is you want to figure out a home base and hop around from there. So it'll really save you some sanity by having to pack and repack all the time, which is, most of the road trip you're doing.
Yeah, so like when we stayed at Yellowstone and then we were able to go to the Tetons for the day, we stayed at Oregon and then we drove the Oregon coast. So it's like we didn't just stay in that place or pack up and go. We kind of used that as our home base to explore a little.
Right. And then you really want to know your limits. It does take a toll, obviously, driving, and you want to think, how often are you switching off? If you're going to be one of the only people who's driving, you got to remember and realize just how many hours staring at the road is going to take out of you.
Yeah, this is when we mentioned it before, like we used our friends as kind of our points of rest. But if you're not going to have somebody you're going to go stay with, you really should consider, if on one of these longer road trips, spending a good amount of time, not 2 days, but like 3, 4, 5, 6 days in one destination, kind of halfway through to regain your bearings.
Definitely. And then, the last thing I think you want to consider is packing.
Yeah. If you're camping or not, it's a big consideration. Things that are good to have on the road, especially if you're just anytime actually, like jumper cables and extra batteries and flares.
Flashlights.
Yeah. If it's gonna be any kind of cold at all, like
emergency blanket,
blanket type thing.
A candle in your car.
You just never know, and if you're going to drive this much, there's so many things that can go wrong. You don't need to be a doomsday prepper, but you want to be prepared with some of these things just in case.
Right, and you also don't forget about your car. One thing we did this was such a long road trip that I did get the oil changed, and I got some things checked out, made sure my tires were good.
We bought new windshield wipers.
Just like little things, little maintenance things, making sure your car's ready before you go. Because you just don't want to get in a situation where you are dead on the side of the road.
Right.
And you've got to come, especially if you're in some of these remote places where there's really long stretches of road.
With nobody.
Exactly.
So what's next? We'll continue to road trip here in the U.S., I'm sure. But I think what's really exciting, and this has really taken off, I know in the social media world, but I've been thinking about this for some time, and I hope that someday soon we're going to jump into the camper van world. Not the move into a camper van and live in it world, but rent one in my 3 top places: Scotland, Iceland, or New Zealand.
Yeah, dude. That, and this is one way we're thinking about road trips is, yes, that you get used to maybe just traveling more, right? Mm-hmm. So it's more cost effective. You could do weekend trips. And again, you can go to our website and check out some of our smaller trips that we've done. You can look at the bigger road trip. But then even thinking on some of these more international style trips, when you get to this destination, using a road trip to explore is a whole nother way to do that.
Yeah, and the camper van does add a layer of ease to traditional road tripping, because then you can stay there. You're not having to find hotels. And in that case, I would go the more flexible route where I just drive until I'm tired and find somewhere to stay.
Your hotel's with you.
Yeah. So I really think that is the ultimate. There's actually a blog I follow, not sponsored. They don't even know I exist. But I will drop their link down at the bottom because they are masters at this camper van life. They even have a very young baby that they've been doing it with. So props to them. I'll put if you're interested in the camper van stuff, I will put that link down in the show notes because they're a really cool resource.
Well, man, that was a doozy of an episode.
Yeah, what is it? It's like 3 days from now since we started.
Well, I gotta say I joined the journey.
Wow.
So, I hope you all liked listening to, half of this I think was just listening about the fun we've had on a road trip. So hopefully inspire you to take some of your own.
Thank you for letting us relive that really amazing summer that we had road tripping across the U.S.
We have a full guide for this trip on our website, travelmorepodcast.com, as well as many other fun resources. You can also find us on Instagram and Reddit.
You can also join the Travel Club for exclusive extras and discounts to some of our favorite resources. Some masterclasses are even in the works and some one-on-one consultations. So join now so you'll be in the know when those things do drop.
So till next time.
Bye. Did you know that every time you book a Disney or Universal vacation, you're paying for a service that you may not even be using?
Really?
That's right. Travel agent costs are added to your Disney or Universal vacation, whether you use one or not.
So you're telling me that I'm paying for something even though I'm not getting the help?
You got it. So next time you want to book a theme park vacation, make your money work for you. By booking with Magic Pass Travel, you'll get our expertise and years of experience without paying any extra and while supporting a small business.
Check out our show notes to find our contact information.
Can't wait to help you plan your next adventure.